while you're in the club, your AI assistant is basically doing speed dating for you.
Yeah,
AI speed
and
dating.
the other person has all of their information already on there. We don't have to go through the process of sitting for a first date and asking a bunch of questions or filling out a whole profile online on a dating app and uploading photos. The AI is already going to have all that information about you, is going to be able to connect with another AI that has all that information about a partner, is going to do the comparisons, is basically going to be your wingman or matchmaker, and is going to make the recommendation in real time to connect with whoever that individual is.
Alrighty, guys, welcome to episode 2. Actually, it's been a long time since the last one of the AI online dating podcast. Let's get started, do some introductions. So the way we do this is we have 20-second intros, a nice bit of pressure there. So we actually got some interesting people here. But if you guys could say your name, your company or organization, and just tell us what team you're on. So the way this works is this is the AI online dating podcast, but we have a mixture of people who are in AI. They may be computer people working for a big tech company who specialize in AI. So they will be AI people, or you could be a dating coach or someone who has a dating app in which you are on the online dating team, or you might be both. You might have your own online dating startup which uses AI, in which you are right in the middle. So that's what I like to do. I like to have a little mixture. So that's name, company, and what team you're on. So let's go for a Dr. Eike Post, PhD first, 20 seconds. Let's go.
Hello, guys. Glad to be here. My name is Eike. I am originally an economist and a lawyer. Already at school, I studied behavioral economics, also related to dating, analyzing the economics of the dating relationships. And later, for the last 15 years, I have been on the entrepreneurial side. Started a dating company 11 years back that I reacquired 2 years ago. So I would be on the dating side, but we have been using AI, or a very simple AI, to match people.
Already nice. Dr. Matt Kwan, PhD, your turn, 20 seconds.
Hi, my name is Matt Kwan. I was at Google for the past 7 years, I guess. I left a couple of years ago to launch Metropolis, which is an AI-based online dating app. The current status of Metropolis, the algorithms work. The AI turned out to be the easy bit. Go-to-market strategy is the hard part with dating apps, and that's where we are at the moment, just trying to figure out a cost-effective way to get to market.
Already nice. Chris Hood, let's go, 20 seconds.
Yeah, hi. Great to be here. My name is Chris Hood. I'm a digital strategist, previously worked at Google for 6 years. Spent a lot of time working across different media and entertainment industries. I have an AI company called Synsible AI today. I'm also very familiar with the dating space, spent a lot of time in it previously. And other than that, I'm an author and a writer, podcast host, a lot of other things. Great
Just
to be
like
here.
me. Thanks for coming, guys. All right, so let's kick this off a bit. Alrighty. So I have had conversations like this before with Eike. I have seen startups come up with entire business models and base their USP on gimmicks that determine how people are matched together. Tinder has the gimmick of swiping, that's all fun and games. Other apps have gimmicks like matching based on musical taste or video chats, all kinds of other things. Now AI will most likely be the new gimmick for dating app matching. Is it just another gimmick for dating apps, or is there much more to it?
I would say one thing that I've seen some people, some startups forget is that the most important thing is that you can only match people once they're on your app. So if you have a great algorithm to match people, but you only have 10 users on the app, and in every city only one, it's just very hard for a dating app to, because you can't you cannot provide a good match if you don't have enough users. So even with a shitty algorithm, if you are Tinder, or even better, if you are Facebook, and you can have your algorithm learn based on billions of users, and then you can have the best people be matched to you. That's much more powerful than if you're just a startup with very few users. So I would say AI is more powerful to make existing dating sites better and provide better matching than for a new company to come in. Because yes, if you were to have 10 million users, then you would be useful. But before you have it, you're not useful. And so just getting there is almost impossible unless you have some other way to acquire users virally, or you have an unlimited marketing budget.
Damn, you're really getting straight to the point there, right? That was going to be like the theme of this episode, like how useful is it truly? So you're basically saying it's ideal for Facebook to do it because they already have so many users in the first place. And I remember starting your own dating app is not easy. You're starting from zero. You have to acquire some friends, some users from who knows where. You got to have a very solid marketing strategy. So I know Ike and Matt can relate to this a lot. I remember, Matt, you were starting in Sydney. So you got to start with one city, and then you got to expand to other cities across the country and to other cities across the world. And if we just take Australia, just for example, those are just the cities. What about the middle of nowhere? It's going to be near enough impossible, very hard to do. So yeah, it's quite a dilemma.
It's not just numbers, it's density of people. Like, you're not going to travel 100 kilometers to go on a date. People have to live within probably 10, 20 kilometers to work. There's also the time issue. It's like not only do you need 1,000 users, they've got to be 1,000 users on the app in that week. It's no use having them dribbling in over a year or so. They need to be concentrated in space and in time. And buying those customers is very expensive. So that's the dilemma for any dating app. It's just getting the density in space and time.
I mean, let's be clear. It's a challenge for any app. I think dating becomes a little bit more complicated because even though there's a big market for dating apps, the market is already flooded. There's dozens upon dozens of existing dating apps that already have quite a large following. But what we're talking about, the science of marketing and trying to get any followers into a location-based app is challenging.
Exactly.
I would maybe add to Chris' points that I would say it's also challenging, and of course to Matt's point, yes, you need to have them in the same location at the same time. But I would say particularly for dating, if it was, let's say, business networking, or if it was friendship, or if it was just chatting, then you could say that there is value in chatting with somebody that is in New York if you're in Sydney, or for platonic relationship, or if it's specifically for Asian women and Western men. So the men already know, yeah, she's going to be in Asia. So there's less of a geographic proximity required because these men that are going on these sites, they know that they're going to have to travel. But if you're looking for a normal dating app, people normally, 95% of the people want somebody in the same city. And then you can have 1 million users, but if they're distributed all over the world, it's still going to be hard. I know this personally because we had, or we still have, millions of users. At some point, millions of users active, but it was still because we got them virally, so we didn't have to spend, we didn't have the marketing budget. So having millions of users, if they're distributed all over the world, you only have a few areas where you have enough critical mass where you actually are a viable option for dating.
I think a big problem I identified either way, no matter, it's a big struggle for any dating app to start. That's one problem. But even if you're there, even Tinder is limited in terms of what it actually is. It's a dating app, and a dating app is designed for being the gateway for relationships. Now, that's a blip in someone's life, and they sell subscriptions. So you want to match with more people, you can get a subscription. But once you get into a relationship, there's no need for you to use the app anymore. So you are no longer a customer unless your relationship ends and you go back to it. So I think even at the high level where they have this solved, Tinder, for example, because they have so many users in the first place, there's still the problem of it only being the gateway and not actually being useful for relationships. It's useful for singles, but singleness is just a stage. And then there's a goal, but the goal kind of contradicts what they're trying to solve, because they want to keep you on the app, but the purpose is to get you into relationships. So it's a tricky business to start with.
Well, I don't
I'm
think
not sure. I mean, there's plenty of other examples like that, like recruitment, job search apps. They're like a one-off thing. You don't expect to have an ongoing relationship with your job search application. And same thing with like large real estate, for example. You don't expect an ongoing relationship with a real estate company. So I don't think the lack of subscriptions is a problem. I think as long as you've got enough liquidity, you should be okay.
Yeah, but I think their goal is not to get you into a relationship, right? Their goal is that the app is successful, which is going to generate additional subscriptions from other people. The good thing about dating is that it's not going anywhere, and it's perpetual, it's continuous. There is always going to be more single people, and definitely in today's society where divorce rates are at an all-time high and people are more digital and connected, more and more people are connecting online, right? 10 years ago, if you said, well, where did you meet your significant other? It would probably have been rare to say, oh, we met on an online dating app. Today, it's very commonplace. So the goal is, if we know that there is a continual market demand and that one person's going to leave, but we're going to add another, the goal for somebody like Tinder is, well, we know we're going to leave, one person's going to leave, but can that one person generate another two? And that's how they grow. That's how they grew. They grew because of success, that this thing works. And because it works, and we can define what works means, because for Tinder, I think it's different than other dating services. But because it worked, word of mouth grew the audience. And all they have to do is, even if it's one subscription for one person one time, they're hoping that that's going to lead to another subscription next month. And they've been able to maintain that for years.
And then it's generational too. So you have children, and then 20 years later, your children become subscribers too. I actually thought about this analogy. So it's like we used to go to nightclubs, right? And we don't anymore because, or at least in my case, we got kids now, and we got other things to do with our time, and we got to go to bed, and we got to work and all this stuff. But nightclubs remain popular because there are always new people reaching that age, whether that's 21, whatever the age is in whatever country you're watching from. There's always going to be a new flow of new customers, basically. So there is always that. But my mind is all this is my theory. So I believe that the next $1 billion dating app is going to be the one that turns dating apps into more than just dating, more like a relationship app. So it can help you with your relationship in terms of guidance, advice, whether that's an AI subscription that provides you with advice. Although I was just looking at ChatGPT 2 hours ago, and it said ChatGPT is not for using advice for getting advice. It's not reliable for getting advice. I thought that was very interesting, actually, because they got all these disclaimers now. But it can be simple for, as Eike was saying, for a huge company with a huge user base like Facebook to make this kind of thing happen. They just haven't necessarily made those moves. I know that they have Facebook dating, but I don't even know what it looks like, or I don't know how popular it is. But my theory is that the next one to really revolutionize this, because I look at Tinder and Bumble, I do not see a final product. Dating apps are still very new. As Chris was saying, 10 years ago, dating apps were rare for people to meet each other. Now, I think it's the first or second most common way people meet each other in terms of relationships. It used to be that people met each other through friends and family back in the 90s, but not anymore. So things are really changing, but I think dating apps have not quite reached their final stage. I think once they add a relationship aspect, relationship management, whatever that may be, it will extend user lifetime much further. And if it can be used to, I know it's a long-term thing, but if it has an effect on the divorce rate in a positive way, and when I say positive, I don't mean increasing the divorce rate, then that can be very nice. But, that's a very long-term thing. But yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on that, or any predictions you have for the future?
Can I ask you, is that outside the scope of this conversation about AI and dating, if we were to discuss what is missing in the current, or why current dating apps are maybe not, because you made the statement that you don't think that's the final stage. So I think that would be something that you would perceive that they are missing, right?
Yeah,
Is that only the relationship aspect, meaning the making a relationship work aspect?
So for example, here's what I imagine. So dating apps sell, Tinder specifically, you can get a membership to one of the specific features is to have unlimited swipes in a day instead of being limited to 100, for example. But if there was an extension of this to relationships, it could be useful to have a subscription that counsels you instead of paying lots of money for couples therapy, which it's very expensive in the places I'm used to. Those can be hundreds of dollars. I've never been on one myself, but that's what I have seen. These things are expensive because they're human based. If there's an AI element, it kind of makes it cheaper, of course, but at the same time, it dehumanizes it. So there's a little AI aspect, but that's not essential to this conversation in particular. I also imagined this was a spooky one I brought up in the last episode. Imagine relationship insurance. So even before this AI boom, all ChatGPT became popular late 2022, early 2023. Years ago, even Facebook was able to identify what political party you would vote for and if your partner is cheating on you. It was able to detect these kinds of signs. And that was before this whole AI thing. So imagine if there's a relationship insurance, and this is a bit of a vague idea, but it detects those behaviors in your partner, and it gives both of you guidance in terms of trying to prevent that. Now, it's not going to prevent it 100%. It's not an exact science. It's only pushing people's behaviors and making people aware of things and how to deal with things. But as an insurance, I can see how that can be very appealing just for people to have that kind of safeguard, to know that if they are stabbed in the back that way, then they know that they should end the relationship if that's the case. I don't know, crazy idea, but that's just one possibility.
Let's take a step back, because your theory is based on, dating apps, maybe not seeing the full life cycle of a dating app yet, but your theory is based on dating apps maintaining what they are today. And so if we go back to the example of going to a club, right? I've seen people actually go to clubs and are on dating apps while they're at the club, right? But let's think about this. It's not necessarily a dating app on an app. What if the dating app was actually the AI itself? So imagine a world where we all now have personal assistants, and that personal assistant knows who you are, knows what your preferences are, and communicate, Bluetooth, can communicate with other digital assistants or personal assistants that are in the area. So now, as I'm in the club, my digital assistant AI is communicating with another digital assistant to say, hey, I found a potential match for you here at the club. Go meet at the bar, right? Which, if we transformed that further to your relationship perspective, I'm in a relationship. What are some of the common problems of relationships? Oh, you forgot our anniversary. Oh, you forgot my date. Well, your personal assistant can help you with that. Oh, what are we going to make for dinner tonight? And those basic arguments, or I forgot something, or reminders, like your personal assistant can now help you with those things. So we're talking about it in an application form, but what we're actually seeing is that the AI is going to be the application, and that all of the tools and resources and information and the ways that we conduct our lives are going to be fueled by that personal assistant that's going to guide us and is going to engage for us in some cases. Now, we think that's ridiculous maybe on some level, but we are already seeing that as like our smart cars. Our smart cars are going to be able to one day communicate directly with the gas station. They're going to be able to pay for gas in advance and direct us to the local gas station and already have a pump reserved for us, or electrical vehicles, if we want to think about it in that way. So if we extract the idea of dating apps out of the app and into something else, now I think we start to see what that future might look like.
Very interesting. So that was funny, actually, because when you were mentioning your own personal AI assistant searching locally, whether that's Bluetooth or something else, while you're in the club, your AI assistant is basically doing speed dating for you.
Yeah,
AI speed
and
dating.
the other person has all of their information already on there. We don't have to go through the process of sitting for a first date and asking a bunch of questions or filling out a whole profile online on a dating app and uploading photos. The AI is already going to have all that information about you, is going to be able to connect with another AI that has all that information about a partner, is going to do the comparisons, is basically going to be your wingman or matchmaker, and is going to make the recommendation in real time to connect with whoever that individual is. You can easily extrapolate that to the future and say, well, I want to continue this relationship, schedule my next date, schedule other events, help me with whatever it is I need help with.
Damn, you really fought out of the box in this one. Just deconstructed what we're using today and really went down to the bare essentials of what if it was universalized so that instead of it being an app for one particular use case, it handles that and many other things.
But if I may just chime in. So you were saying that your AI, your personal assistant, just looks up other people in the club and makes a connection when they see it fit. But where do they get the data from? The data needs to be consent that somebody puts the data somewhere, because nobody can find my data. Your AI cannot find my data. So I have to go to some kind of app, and we have to choose the same app, because if Matt is choosing, well, let's say somebody else is choosing OkCupid, and I'm choosing Tinder, then they're two different platforms. So it's still going to be proprietary. I mean, you could say, well, OpenAI, we could have one data center where all the data goes. But there have been many initiatives to do this kind of data center, and it hasn't really happened. Because who's maintaining this data center? There needs to be some kind of entity where you can put your data for other people to find it. So I would say the best place would be Facebook or Tinder or Bumble.
Or
just
our phones. We already have a personal assistant in our hands. Now, if I was to open this up and say, I'm going to add specific data based on whatever it is, and I want to expose that data based on whatever it is, I agree with you. To an extent, there needs to be some sort of mechanism by which you are allowing that data to be shared or registering or opting in, whatever the case might be.
Exactly.
But we already have that, right? And so
Exactly.
all I'm saying
is, but you still have to say,
yeah, I'm saying that there is definitely an opportunity for having someone like, Facebook is a great example. If you want to go back to that, the metaverse, whatever you want to say, where you are exposing certain elements of your profile openly, knowing that somebody else out there could find that, communicate with that, and register.
Yeah, for that to happen, you'd almost build that in at the operating system level of the phone, which means that basically Apple and Android become the dating app. And I don't know if Apple and Android want to be in that space.
But again, they already do. They already do. I have a digital wallet with all of my credit card information in this phone. They don't have access to it, but I can go and I can scan a register and buy for something. There's no different from Apple Pay or Android Pay or Google Pay going into the grocery store and scanning it as there is if I wanted to make a connection with you, scan your phone, exchange digital business cards, or scan your phone and make a match.
Yeah,
the technology is already out there.
Yeah, but for a dating app to work, the information in the protocol will have to be dating specific, like your age, your sexual preferences, whether you have children or not. That stuff is not in your phone by default. It would have to be added
That's correct.
specifically for that use case. And I'm not sure if Apple and Android want to be in that space. So, but I mean, with the nightclub scenario, that's the spatial and temporal density issue at its worst. Like you have to get enough people in the same place at the same minute, and that's a real challenge. Like I've seen a few startups attempting it with location-based services, and some of them have tried the Bluetooth bracelets and stuff. They can never get the density. Maybe in future someone will get it working, but it's very hard to get enough people taking it up to make it work.
Right. Yeah, so I would say that this brings us back to the point where I think the AI is, we figured it out. I think what Chris was proposing, it's not too difficult to do such a personal assistant, but that personal assistant needs to have access to the data. And it's a problem to get people to put the data all in the same place so that that application has a critical mass. So it's probably better to go with an application where the data already is. So Facebook, Google, iOS, Apple, that's where the data already is, what the personal assistant could use to now make matches. So it's a Facebook using AI. Facebook would be able to do what Chris outlined. Provide a personal assistant to every user where they can say, yes, I want to have my data used in that way, and open it up to everyone else, and then get introduced.
And you would also have to look at this as, Facebook. I think Facebook is a great example of how you would do this. You have a platform, and then you can offer ways to expose data, but you can also open that platform up to third-party developers. So if somebody wanted to develop the social dating app, whatever you call it, that then exposes that information through the AI service, you could then get a lot of adoption by that. But there's also nothing preventing somebody from going and saying, I'm going to build this. The technology's out there. You just have to figure out a way to establish what that open platform is going to be.
Mm-hmm. I think maybe it's like Facebook came out with Threads, and Facebook already acquired Instagram a long time ago. But as soon as they open up Threads, how many people sign up? Because they already got billions of people signed up on their current platforms in the first place. So all they have to do is open a new room when they're already popular, and that room will be flooded with users. So it's just a matter of, in Facebook's case, let's say, they just open the floodgate, and then boom, they got millions of users within a few hours. It really is that crazy. Meanwhile, startups are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in years, and it breaks my heart, really, because I love startups, struggling to even get 500,000 users. And that's crazy. And like we said before, even when of 1 million users globally, it still doesn't quite give you that density in the places you need. You still have a lot of work to do. So it's very easy for Facebook to do it. At the same time, I think you were talking about assistance on your phone. I'm also thinking of it this way. So on my phone, I can just tap on the bottom and I'm searching something on Google without opening the Google app. It's just part of how the phone's designed. Although it helps that my phone is a Google Pixel, and Android. But aside from that, if we start there, for example, they already have the means to make it happen. And it's another matter of whether they want to or not. Like Matt was saying, if Google or Apple really want to be involved in dating. But all it takes is really just one of these big tech companies like Google, Facebook, whatever it may be, to just create a team and open the floodgate on this new thing, whether that's Threads or something else. I think that would be instant, but it will still take a while to take off, but it's something. Or even OpenAI could do it. I'm not sure if they even have their own app for ChatGPT. I just use my laptop all the time. But if they're able to, if they have their own app, then they can just make it part of their thing very easily too.
I mean, if we really were to dive into this some more, you think about like other industries. We got open banking, right, to streamline financial services, and healthcare is becoming a little bit more open with their APIs and the ability to share data across different segments. We're talking about basically making an open dating type of protocol, right, where the data can be shared across any type of device. But it's becoming more seamless, right? If we look at our smart watches as an example, Fitbits, they are connected to other type of health-based services. Yes, there are apps that are living in there, but they're transmitting that data. I can put on a watch, I can check my pulse and heart rate, I can communicate and store that data, share it back with my doctor, go in to visit my doctor sees the information. There's apps behind it, yes, but the openness is becoming a little bit more blurred, so that to the average consumer, they just know, I've got a watch, and I can, I can track this information. If we got to a point where there is call it an open dating protocol that had information about us that allowed us to make matches and was able to share that protocol across various types of devices, now we're getting to another level where it could still be potential, whether it's Google or Apple, or somebody else.
Yeah, potentially you could use the Mastodon protocol for that. Mastodon is designed to be a federated social network with an open protocol. Potentially you could reuse that for dating.
Yeah, but even if you look at that, I mean, the total of it, I don't know how many users they have in total, but it's probably less than 1/100th of Twitter, all of them combined. So, and it would seem to me that a platform like Tinder or all of the match groups, dating sites, and all of the Bumble groups, dating sites, they don't really have an interest in making it open, because then they could lose market share easily. So
That's
they
true.
have, I mean,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Until somebody else does it and everybody starts using it. and then they're right. Oh, why didn't we think of that? Like, look, innovation and how we've seen industries transform over the years has always been who's first to do it. And right now, you're absolutely right. The Tinders and Matches and everybody else of the world want to maintain those user bases because that's their profit margins, right? And they're not about to expose that. But that doesn't mean that if somebody else comes along and begins to expose it, that you don't see an exodus from traditional dating to this new form, whatever it might be. Now, granted, we don't see that with like the metaverse. We don't see that with other types of technologies. VR is not catching on in the way that everybody had hoped it was going to catch on. But if we look at like blockchain and cryptocurrencies, like there's nothing preventing somebody from creating some type of new open standard specifically for social relationships that completely transform how we engage with each other. It's bound to happen.
That funny you mentioned VR. There was a journalist asking about VR dating today. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Because VR, as wonderful as it was, because I was involved with that when Google Daydream came out, and that was a lot of fun, but it's limited by if you're using your phone rather than a specifically designed device, then you're very limited by battery life. But I just can't imagine millions of people just buying VR equipment and using their time with that when they could barely get PS5s in the first place. So kind of funny, but that'll be even harder to achieve because now I'm realizing even VR is a bit of a gimmick, as wonderful as it may be. But even those projects seem to be failing. As excited we were for those, but perhaps we can move on to we have talked about some real big ideas here already, real macro level things. But what if we think about some of the more simplistic ideas? So one of the ethical issues of AI transferring into online dating is photos. You can fake your photos. That's not new, but it's much easier, of course. And when you think of dating apps as they are now, Tinder, Bumble, whatever it may be, they're very much photo based. I know there are some alternatives out there which match based on things other than photos. There's of course this bias when there are apps like Tinder which use photo mediums, because the judgment is really, for the most part, based on what someone looks like and how their photography and their photogenic competency is. And a lot of men are suffering with that. because women take more photos. But now that you can fake photos very easily, what are some ways that this can be resolved? Perhaps some of you have your own dating app projects now or previously. Is this something you have thought about before?
So with Metropolis, as part of this onboarding process, you've got to take a selfie. And the selfie is just used for reference purposes internally. But we make sure that all the photos you upload as profile pictures, we run face recognition on the reference picture and on all the uploaded pictures, and we reject pictures if the face doesn't match. So if you upload someone else's picture, or if you modify your own face too much, it'll just get rejected. So you can use AI to detect altered images as well, which is what we do.
Already. Eike, what about you? Do you have something for this?
I would like to ask a question, if I may, to Matt. So a lot of the times you can modify a picture just very, very slightly. You just do a very slight modification in the face so that you have two pictures next to each other and you almost don't see where the picture was modified, but the one looks much more attractive than the other. So
we can't do anything. We can't do anything about face filters. So face recognition seems to work based on width of the eyes and distance from the eyes to the mouth, like the facial structure. So we can detect catfishing just uploading different pictures. Face filters, which tend to tweak face complexion and things like that, we can't do anything about that.
Right. Okay.
But to be honest, a lot of that is just putting lipstick on a pig. It's not going to turn you from a 2 to a 10. It's going to turn you from a 2 to a 3. So I'm not too concerned about it.
Okay.
Alrighty. Any other comments on this?
Well, I mean, I would say the biggest problem in dating, and that actually is more general than online dating, is that people initially focus too much on pictures and combine that with women having a very high acceptance rate, meaning getting a lot of likes, and men, only very, very few men ever getting any likes. That even makes this problem much, much, much worse. And that's why in the dating site I was working on before, we blurred the picture until the people talked. And we had psychometric tests, which we still use, in order to give them something else to judge a person on besides the picture. Because I think that's a key, that people are focusing too much on the pictures.
Mm-hmm. And
I'd like to step up.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to step up in defense of pictures. I mean, that's the way men at least choose someone. We scan the room, we see someone we like. So looks are an intrinsic part of how men choose a partner. And there was an interesting startup in Sydney a few years ago called Slow Dating. And the way it worked is you were assigned at random to somebody and you do a voice call. So you talk to somebody for half an hour, and at the end you decide, do you want to proceed? And then after you decide, if both parties want to proceed, you get to see the other person's picture. And the success rate on the chatting was 100%. Like everybody who spoke said, yes, I want to see this person again. After seeing the photos, it fell to 1 in 3. So I think visual is a much better predictor of success than anything else.
Well, again, I think you have to define what success is. Visual might be
wanting to see the person again.
Yeah, exactly. If we're basing it solely on a successful match, and I want to see this person in setting up a first date or setting up a subsequent date, absolutely. If we're talking about the actual relationship, I don't know what the numbers are, but I would love to see, some type of research that shows how successful relationships are after, say, the third or fourth date, based on either visual compatibility or, a personality, audible type of compatibility, because I think there's
Yeah,
a
but
big difference
you
in
don't get
there.
to a relation, but you don't get to a relationship until you've had the successful first date, and that's based on looks. So
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I'm stuck there. That's quite scary, actually. But that's how they do it. Perhaps we can move on to let's talk about your particular projects. Are there what are you working on right now? And do you have any AI features? What are some of the most exciting features, whether it's AI or not as well? So feel free to answer those. Let's talk about what you guys are doing.
I'm happy to just chime in here. Believe it or not, it's funny that we were just talking about it, because the project that I'm working on is actually a dating app that has no photos. Because again, there's some theory behind there. I don't know if it's accurate or not. I tend to agree heavily with Matt. But I also know that we've gotten too heavily dependent upon the visual elements of dating, and that it has become superficial. And in a lot of ways, that's part of what dating is. But if you look at Tinder as a prime example, I think more people spend time on Tinder just looking at photos as opposed to actually setting up dates, because it's a thing to do. It's something. I mean, I've done it before in my past. Swipe, 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 swipe. Interesting, right? Like there's a play of odds. Clear research has shown that men will say yes to almost 100% of the women they fall on, and women are going to be a lot more selective. And
we didn't even need research for that, but yeah, that's definitely true.
So if we also look at some of the things that are happening across pop culture, I think one of the biggest shows out there right now is Love at First Sight. It's in its entire show that's based on blind dating principles. Now, I know that currently, the thought of blind dating is definitely suspect, and definitely a fear of privacy and security and safety and a lot of other things. But I'm exploring how AI can be used for other areas than just a visual connection. And, we've talked about some of them, and I'm not going to get into the meaty sauce of what we're specifically doing. But if we think about blind dating, if we go all the way back to early days of dating, 100, 200 years ago, there was no other way than to actually meet somebody and talk to them and get to know them, and not compare against, I've often called it the candy store of photos. It's like, what do I want? What do I want? I don't know. There's so many options here. How do you start to remove some of that and really get down into the more logical side of relationship building and focus on that side, as opposed to just trying to make matches?
Oh yeah, so I got a great one for you. But all this stuff on the whiteboard you see behind me, by the way, is some of the brainstorming and structuring of the second edition of my book, The Message Game, which is a book about online dating. There is a Canadian university lecturer, professor, very famous. He predicted the internet 30 years before it happened. His name is Marshall McLuhan, and he was at University of Toronto. I'm not sure if any of you guys have heard of him, but his probably the most famous quote associated to him is "the medium is the message," and this has always stuck with me ever since I read this in his book and learned more about him. because the medium that Tinder uses is the medium of photos. It's a visual medium. So, Chris, what you're referring to is it's just crazy, since social media, especially things like Instagram and Tinder too, of course, have made things very focused on pictures and videos. And we now got this short form video boom, which is another medium in terms of videos, which TikTok really boomed recently. It's not a new thing, but then instantly Instagram and Facebook and YouTube adopted that same format. But anyway, the medium is the message. And ultimately, the design really defines how everything is long term on the macro level. So it's very fascinating that you're coming up with that you're working on a photoless dating app. Did you say?
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's just think about this. Audio is the fastest way to connect with something. I mean, that's why we've got podcasts. We listen. It's why music is so popular. It's because it allows us to escape. If you've ever watched a movie with no audio or sound effects or music, it's not the same, right? Audio is what is connecting us quickly to something. And we also know that the power of voice, like, look, if you're going to talk to somebody for the rest of your lives, you better hope that you like their voice, right? You're gonna, their age is going to change. That's the reality. They're not going to look the same when you first meet them, but in theory, their voice is always going to be the same. So you've got to have that type of audible connection with somebody. And that's why shows like Love at First Sight, that is solely based on talking on the phone, as you mentioned earlier, and getting to know somebody through conversation, is always going to lead to a more successful relationship than purely a physical one. Physical one by far is definitely what is driving our instant gratification. That's why Tinder and Instagram and YouTube Shorts, our attention span is becoming smaller than ever before. We are going through a bombardment of visual stimulations. And yes, if I was either in a bar or if I was on my phone, I'm going to click on the first woman or multiple women that I think are attractive. But when you get through all of that, if there's no substance, if there's no connection, if you can't have a conversation, if you can't enjoy that conversation and enjoy what the sounds of their voices, then what do you have? And so my philosophy here is that if you can figure out a way to hone in specifically on that level of compatibility and remove the the distractions, because oftentimes dating apps are a distraction, especially, heck, how many people have a date lined up for Friday and are still swiping, right? Hedging their bets, right? Because it's there and there's an endless supply. Again, it goes back to the candy store concept. If you can remove that distraction because you no longer have an endless variety of photos to look at and actually focus in on the elements that are critical for a relationship, then maybe, I don't know, but maybe you're going to be a little bit more successful.
Damn, this really opens up everything. So there are lots of things crossing my mind right now. I had to make a lot of notes. I can't remember which person is associated with this, but we're exposed to more information in one day than humans were in their entire lifetime a few hundred years ago. Like, how crazy is that? And that's just for like news and basic, just normal, any information. We're exposed to more in one single day because there's just too much going on. And you also mentioned, I've been thinking of casinos when you have been speaking for the last few times, because I was just in Las Vegas 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm imagining when people are using Tinder, they're swiping, they're like poker cards, and they may get some matches, they may get some poker chips at the poker table, but they still want to gamble. They don't want to cash out and leave immediately. They still want to play that game and see what happens until it runs out of steam. Oh, I'm hot right now. The table's hot right now. I'm seeing a lot of parallels here between casinos and dating apps, especially in relation to Tinder.
And I'll just add really quickly, and then somebody else can respond. When you walk into a casino, you hear all of the sounds of the jingles and the jingles. Now, granted, there's also visuals, there's lights and sounds and big numbers, but you're hearing that constant clinging and sounds of coins coming out, because it's driving that sense of, oh, I could potentially win.
Exactly. And yeah. And also onto your other point, there's so much dopamine, whether it's TikTok videos, YouTube shorts, Instagram reels, whatever it may be. Our use of the internet, especially our use of social media and the way lots of dating apps are set up, are just driving our dopamine levels like crazy. We're so obsessed using these things, and especially as a man, when you're swiping, oh, I got a match, let's see, I can get, oh, there's the excitement, dopamine. Like you were saying, it's distracting, and we don't actually need that when what actually matters long term. We need to think long term instead of short term excitement and dopamine. Long term, we need a partner who's good for us. There's just too much dopamine that we're out of touch with how to connect. So that's why I'm so fascinated about this. That's why when you said about voice, that's crazy, because we have it's funny that there was on Joe Rogan's podcast, who was talking about Joey, I can't remember what his name is. He does not answer. He's like the only person who doesn't message people. He calls them instead. And everyone else is the opposite. We don't do phone calls anymore. We just message each other. Back in the day, 10, 20, 30 years ago, we were calling each other all the time. Now, granted, it wasn't in our pocket. It was in our house. We may have had 1 or 2 phones in the house, and then someone else would have to pick it up, and then, oh, it's for you. Okay. It was less convenient, but we're just so out of touch with how these things used to be. And the other layer to this is, you can fake your photos, and maybe you can have some defenses for that, but you can really not fake your voice, as far as I can imagine. Now you can use like a crazy megaphone and make your voice sound really crazy and stupid, but like really, I can't imagine how you could actually fake your voice. It's not common knowledge, at least. So that is very interesting to me. It's quite wild. And the other part of this is, I guess, because we're so out of touch using our voice in the first place, something like that will actually help us get back in touch to how this is. Kind of full circle a little bit, but I think that's a nice touch. That'll be fascinating. I'm really interested in that. That's crazy. Do you ever guys want to share what you're working on?
Could you just, oh, okay, what you're working on. Oh, okay. All right. So in 2011, I'm just mentioning that it's not about now, but in 2011, we were introducing a voice functionality inside the dating app, because we saw the trend on WhatsApp that people were leaving voice messages, and we felt it would be a differentiating factor to connect by voice, and people potentially focus less on the image. The only thing is, there we found that the problem was that while people are very quick to upload pictures or to just get them from Facebook or Instagram, they are not so quick in order to upload a voice message. A lot of people are self-conscious, especially women. So then you have a lot of profiles where just women just they're hesitant to fill it in. And if they hesitant to fill it in, the conversion rate to making an activated profile goes down, but people just don't have to fill it in. So that's why we dropped it. But then we just said, when I reacquired the dating site, the idea was, hey, let's just cut out pictures totally and let's only have audio conversations. So basically a Clubhouse, but with a dating purpose. And the difference there was that we said, if you do it like chat roulette, if you do it like, or Omegle, where you have one-on-one conversation, that's kind of too aggressive for a lot of people. So rather than having streaming as the other end, where you like on Clubhouse, where you have one person talk to 5,000 other people, so just have it 4 to 5 people, and have 4 to 5 people connect in a small group for 15 minutes via voice, and then afterwards rate each other. Now we have modified the concept a little bit. One is that we do want to allow video as well. And the second is that we are kind of changed the market. Because we were talking about earlier that for a dating relationship, you need to have a very high density because you need people in the same city. So we were looking at kind of relationships that you would want to build with people, even if they're more platonic, if they're not physical relationships. And we felt there was a lot of need for people to have self-help groups with certain issues they have. Let's say people that are have suffering from ADHD, people that have a disability, people that have diabetes, obesity, and so on. So we've created right now 36 groups according to different topics, so that most people would fit into one of those groups, and then we connect them with similar people. So they're the critical mass requirement, even though we already have a lot of people, but still, in order to be able to compete with Tinder, it's very difficult. So the critical mass requirement there is lower, but then the concept is pretty much the same as we had designed before for the dating site.
Nice. What about you, Matt?
So I'm playing around with matching algorithms because quite often with dating apps, you don't always have complete information. People just won't fill in certain areas, certain questions. Quite often the picture quality is pretty bad. I was looking around at different techniques, and probably the most effective one I found is the Netflix recommendation algorithm. They look at how users have rated movies, and they cluster similar ratings. So the movie which is popular with one group of people is probably going to be popular with everyone. And I ran that algorithm across some speed dating data. There's a spreadsheet around with like 3,000 individual speed dates. And after trading on about half the data, we could predict whether people would say yes or no in a speed date with about 70% accuracy. And using the Netflix algorithm, it also tells you how many variables affect a person's preferences. So with men, we got the best results with one variable. Like you assume that the one variable that affects a man's preferences is how picky he is, like what's his threshold for attractiveness, and that varies among men, but it's a single dimension. We found for women, there's probably about 3 dimensions. Don't know what they are, but there's 3 variables that affect their decisions. So that algorithm works pretty well, and we'll probably take it live, but it needs a lot of training data. We need a lot of people actually saying yes or no to each other for us to build up that matrix. The second challenge is supply and demand. So, like I said, with men, it's driven by one variable, which means that if you've got an attractive woman, every man is going to say yes to her. We can predict that all men will say yes, but she can't date all the men. So we need to implement supply and demand, and that's where things get a bit trickier. In theory, you can just rank all the women from most to least attractive. You can rank the men from most to least attractive. But unfortunately, there's three variables involved with men. So you've got to rank them in three dimensions, and that gets complicated. And then there's the issue of you don't always have equal numbers of men and women. So if you've got 100 men, but only 50 women, and they're ranked, do you just not give the bottom 50 men a match? Or do you match each woman to two men and let them fight it out? I don't know. Those are the challenges we're facing at the moment.
Very challenging. Actually, that was funny because 3 years ago, 2020, December 2020, I interviewed a Tinder employee and I asked 35 questions, and it turned out that the good news for men, at least, the best country for the man to woman ratio, from a man's perspective, one man to two women, and that was Peru, which is where my wife is from by coincidence. But it's the opposite, or it was at the time. I don't know how those particular stats are on Tinder right now. But it was at the time the opposite. Two men every woman in the USA and other such countries such as Australia and England. So that is always going to be a challenge. But oh,
So the recommendation would be for men to go to Peru, just like you did.
you gotta do like airline partnerships. You say sign up and you will have the chance. If you don't match, you'll have the chance to fly to a country that has a bit of what do you call it, access. So so that's one solution, I suppose. But you know, you could get a fun little trip out of it.
I read a factoid. I've no idea if it's true, but the country where you got the best chance of picking up apparently was Spain. But I think a lot of that was driven just by British tourists going to Ibiza. And, that would have thrown the numbers out a bit.
Well, that's a very popular tourist destination. Where my European geography is concerned, Paris is the most visited city on Earth. But when people visit France, it's really just to Paris generally. But lots of European countries, whether that's Germany, England, even Finland, and many other countries, go to Spain, but they go all over the place. So that's quite chaotic, I imagine. Especially if you're Spanish, you got to deal with all those other Europeans coming in. So there we go. But yeah, interesting stuff, because on a micro level, you're either, from a man's perspective at least, you're either struggling to get matches or you're doing okay for yourself, to say the least. And then with women, it's a matter of pickiness to select the right matches, because they're getting swiped so much more in comparison, for Tinder at least. Other dating apps may be designed completely different.
If I may just add one more thing, one comment on what Matt was talking about when analyzing the algorithms. Last year, we were trying to do the perfect algorithm, and we were talking to some researchers to implement a compatibility test. So on our side, we have 10 different tests, psychometric tests, and we wanted to develop a specific compatibility test. And the promise to the researchers was that they would get feedback on what compatibility test actually worked. So they were very interested to collaborate with us and to do this for free, because they wanted to have feedback data. The only thing is that then we define, well, what's a success? And well, a success for them is not that there is a match. In fact, many times, as we are too much focused on the looks, the matches actually work very poorly. We're not very good at selecting, especially on dating apps, what's actually good for us. So, for example, for women, a good choice would be a man who is kind, who's caring for them. Not so much a man who's tall, good-looking, and masculine, but that's what they go for, generally speaking. So the success of a match, of a matching algorithm, if we use the success of both people liking each other, then that's actually a very poor predictor of the compatibility, because compatibility success means they like each other, they get along really well, they get married, they have children, and they have a successful relationship. But then you get the feedback only several years later.
Yeah, exactly. Very long-term thing. I remember discussing this with Matt on the first episode. Um, especially in terms of, I think we were discussing a using AI to find your soulmate. And of course, that's going to take a very long time to get there because, yeah, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I think like you've got to train an AI with ground truth data,
Mhm.
and you can only tell if a relationship is successful after about 7 years. So yeah, you need 7 years of data. And unless people have already been collecting that data for 7 years, well, you've got to start now, and then you won't have a working AI until 2030. So that's a challenge. And also, you need to decide up front, like, what information are you collecting? What can you actually measure? What's measurable? Can you measure kindness? Can you measure sense of humor? I don't think you can personally, but yeah, those are the dilemmas you face.
Exactly. Let's move on to AI partners. So here's a bit of a stupid sounding one for the most part. However, I suppose it can be a genuine concern because on the first episode, when we kind of touched onto this topic, possibly by accident, I didn't really take it seriously, but now that I have seen other people's content, especially a friend of mine talking about this, um, it might be more serious than I previously imagined. There was an NBC interview, and they were interviewing a woman who had her own AI companion. But it's just an app on your phone, and you can customize what your companion looks like. It's just a digital avatar. It's no better than Pokemon, basically. It's like a video game, but this thing talks to you and you talk to it. Something like that. I don't see the appeal. It's so unrelatable to me. I'm a married man, so I'm good. But there is, as a lot of people have been saying, an epidemic of loneliness. London and Tokyo are known to be the two loneliest cities on Earth, unless there's some recent data that shows another city. So it is a very serious thing where there's a lot of loneliness, there's a lot of depression. It's one conversation if that's anything to do with how we have used technology in recent years, social media and everything. But the reality we're facing right now is that there are lots of people who are turning to AI companions, whether those are digital, as in, no, well, of course they are digital, but some of them are basically an avatar. You can look at them, you could possibly personalize them, or maybe there's a library and you pick the one with the big tits. If that's what you're into. I have seen these. I'm not a user, but I have seen these, and they do actually sell. It's crazy to me. The next step, of course, is because where it's at right now, because these things are only on the screen, you can see them, you can be you it gives you dopamine in various ways because it can talk to you and you can look at it and it can look very attractive. It can look realistic. It doesn't even have to look realistic, but some of them are designed that way. The next step, of course, is to introduce the physical aspect. Now, of course, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago or something, in the news, everyone started to find out about these new sex toys, sex robots and everything like that. So the technology has been around, it has developed recently. Once those two, sex robots, for lack of a better term, and AI companions combine, all it takes is two of these companies to make a partnership, and it happens. And the prototypes are made. Maybe it's already happening right now, but we could be there in the near future, and there will definitely be people using this. And again, even before this AI kaboom recently, a lot of these sex robots, I wouldn't say they already had AI, but they could say no. So they could give consent and they could take consent away. Just looking at your reaction there. Pretty scary, but once the AI part comes in, the danger is it could really replace real human relationships. And we can take this to so many levels, but one way I thought about this is, imagine if you broke up with your girlfriend and you get one of these AI sex robots, for lack of a better term. That's not what you're just going to use it for, but you know, some people will, some people won't. But I am not cutting to the chase on this one. Anyway, imagine you design this thing. Again, you can personalize it, let's say, and you get it delivered, and it imitates the behaviors or the desirable characteristics of someone you know. Of course, that's gonna be creepy, but at what point is this going to really send off the alarm bells? Because, you know, this is some crazy stuff, but there's crazy stuff happening all the time anyway. I don't know. I don't have a particular question to ask you about this, but do you have any thoughts on AI companionship, where it is now and where it can be in the future, and what this means for the human race in general?
Personally, I think it's a novelty. Like, we've had these moral panics before about comic books and online pornography and things like that. They're a bit of fun, and then we move on. I think AI companions are going to be the same. We'll play around with them. It might be valuable to some people at some point in their life, but I don't think it's going to have any long-term impact. That's my guess. It's not something I'd use, and I don't really see the attraction, but it's hard to see them being more than just a novelty.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, we have the movies to blame, really, if we think about this. Robots were introduced back in the 1920s in film, and AI really has been a part of mainstream movies all through the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Star Trek introduced the thought of falling in love with robots. You know, but 1927 Metropolis introduced robots as a love interest. Then more currently, you've got movies like Her, where you fall in love with the AI assistant that you have with you. Actually, a year ago or so, maybe it was this year, another movie came out called Robots, where you actually have a robot companion that would go off and looks like you and would do all of the mundane tasks that you want it to have. And in this particular movie, two robots actually fall in love with each other, and then they run off together, and their owners have to go and chase them down, right? So you've got a lot of different types of themes and ethical considerations. Obviously, they have been rooted, throughout movie history. And what I feel at a very high level is that our perception of what AI is today is rooted in what we believe it is from movies. And where we're actually at is probably a good 10 years away from, again, what the normal individual's perception of AI is. If you were to go and poll people on the streets of New York City, most of them are going to probably think that AI is going to take over the world, and Terminator, themes of Terminator, or even if you want to think of Wall-E from Disney. And again, all of that information is not coming from reality. It's coming from the media's interpretation of what AI is. Now, does that mean that we will see a case where we become more compatible with AI and robotics? Maybe. I mean, again, if we look at history, the cell phone was basically invented on Star Trek, and now we have them in our hands. Have we gotten to teleportation or hoverboards of Back to the Future? No, not yet, but not for lack of trying. I mean, as soon as Iron Man came out, there was thousands of people and millions of monies invested in trying to create an Iron Man suit, right? So do we think it's possible? Yeah, it's possible. And we are becoming a more lonely society. So we are going to search for compatibility wherever it is. If we believe it's real and we believe that it is responding equally back to us as individuals, then yeah, the potential of falling in love or whatever else with that AI, is more realistic. But how close are we? Yeah, we're years away from that actually happening.
Interesting. It reminds me a bit of Y2K. Younger listeners will have no idea what I'm talking about. But when everyone thought planes were going to fall out of the sky and computers will blow up in all kinds of disasters just because it would change from 1999 to the year 2000. What will happen? Turns out they know how to do numbers, and it wasn't anywhere near as bad as whatever happened they predicted. But yeah, I think
I would say, if I may, that there are different, if you're talking about AI replacing your mates, then there are different functions of that a mate might have. A mate can be a friend, a mate can be a coach, a mate can be a sexual partner, a mate can be a drinking or activity buddy. So it depends on what function it is. If you're talking about the physical activity, for example, sex, or some, say, play tennis or go drinking, you're not going to have an AI be replacement of a physical human being, because, as you said, you need to combine the robot part with the AI. But if you're talking about language learning, for example, very easy. It's happening right now. Friends of mine are using AI to actually talk to ChatGPT Premium and to actually get responses in a natural sounding language, and actually boosting the language learning activity quite a lot. That, of course, is not the typical activity you get from a mate. So, but let's say psychotherapy, let's say being a friend. If a lot of people right nowadays have their friendship mainly be via message, so having a response that is ideal in terms of psychotherapy can sometimes be better than a friend who doesn't respond in the ideal way. So, for example, a psychotherapist, you go to a psychotherapist and you know that person probably has so many other clients, and they probably don't really care about you, but they're just trained to basically respond in the correct way. And talking to a psychotherapist feels so much better many times than talking to a friend that maybe cares for you, but then doesn't have the right response. So I do think that, and there are, I know personally about projects that are working on that. They're basically doing your own life coach and your own psychotherapist. So I'm not sure about friend, because friend, you want somebody who also do physical activities. But if it's about some mental connection that everybody needs in order to feel less lonely, I do think that AI can already provide now some help.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, in the future, my friend was talking about this. Once it has such capabilities to do things better than humans, and I don't mean all humans, let's just say whatever you may be used to, because there's loneliness. There a lot of people could see a lack of friends or just have no friends. So their option then is to go on to Amazon and buy some kind of AI robot, let's say, in the future. Or they could go on the Google Play Store and find some AI companion that they could just see on their phone and use that in whatever form. Now, when it's on a physical level, now there's not going to be anything that compares to the real human experience. But once it really entertains your dopamine, that's when people get hooked onto it. So this is how social media and dating apps have become so popular in the first place. They might not be the greatest. Dating apps can be great. Let's just stick with Facebook, for example. It might not be the greatest use of our time. A lot of time we're just scrolling. It's not necessarily good for us, although someone like me, I use it more for business, in which case I'm using it in a more productive way, at least for the most part. It's easy to say that and then look at your statistics. Oh shit, I spent 3 hours on it today. That's not ideal. Of which 2 hours was not work related. But once it gets to a point where humans benefit from that and it becomes more accessible and provides fun and doesn't argue back, then it's potentially a huge problem, especially for human to human relationships, because now that's going to be diluted. It's going to be less pure. There's going to be interference. But that's just basic thinking on my part.
Well,
Right?
If I
AI
may
is still...
just,
Go ahead.
I was just going to give two examples that have already happened long before this AI came around, where we were communicating to some kind of fake technology, and it was replacing our human sentiment for care or for love. One is the dating sites that are openly saying we are for entertainment. We only pretend to be a dating site, and where people know that chatting to someone which they know they're not really interested in, and they're still willing to pay just because the person is responding and acting as if it's really somebody interested in them. That exists. And that people that knowingly pay for this, even though they know it's really fake. And a second one is the Tamagotchi egg, which is like something that I remember when I was small. In the mid 90s or late 90s, this egg that basically you had to do something to care for it, for like this animal. It was a kind of computer game, and people really fell for it like it was their own pet, as if it was their dog. So they gave them some kind of emotion, even though it was not natural.
Mine died years ago.
Here's a follow-up to that. How many of you, and definitely anybody who's listening, I ask you to put this in the comments. How many of you actually say thank you back to either Alexa or Google Home when you ask it a question? Now, why do we do that? there's no need to respond with a thank you, but there is a human elemental emotional connection that we have when somebody is sharing information with us. And so we do that instinctually. And that's the same type of mentality that we're seeing start to take place in areas like these online and AI companions. But the two areas that AI is missing today is empathy and critical thinking. And until those two elements are established inside of AI, then it's always going to be fictitious or just not real, right?
That's funny. It reminds me of a meme. I'm gonna edit it onto the video. Hey Google, play us some music, please. And then the other guy says, why are you being so polite? Just in case. And then it cuts to like the apocalypse where robots are taking over. Keep that one alive. He always said please. That's funny. But I think the point you're making here is it's already influencing human behavior in a way, because we know we're talking to someone who isn't there. We know we're talking to a device that is plugged into the mains, and we know when we're talking to a human with eyeballs and ears that breathes, there's an easy difference. And then as these things, well, humans are going to evolve very slowly. We're going to die before we see humans evolve, but this technology will evolve to be potentially closer and more human-like. And that'll be very interesting to see or find out when the apocalypse will happen. At what point behaviors will change and actually affect the human side just because of how we're treating the technology side. So that's another deep one, actually. I gotta think about that. Yeah, that's gonna be unpredictable.
I mean, if we
in
bring
my
this
case.
back to the other analogy that's been shared, men have paid more than they should throughout history for women to pretend to like them. So there's really no difference in doing this for an AI.
Oh man, you're absolutely right. I did a poll on this. Hold on, let me just find the numbers. I did a poll to 676 men responded. Have you ever paid for sex? 35% said yes, 65% said no. And someone told me it's the oldest thing people have ever paid for, something along those lines. So that's actually pretty wild. I was so oblivious to this. I did not realize 35%. So just imagine how popular it would be for men to seek validation, attention, companionship, or even sex in AI itself.
Well, one of the other biggest growing segments today in dating is the sugar dating sites. So again, if you're not familiar with that, the concepts of sugar daddies and sugar mamas and anything else, where you're basically paying for companionship, there are dozens of sites out there that are now skyrocketing. And part of this is due to, I think, a social economical condition of our youth, as well as, again, the lack of human connections that we typically find in traditional dating. And there's a side of it of wealth dispersion, and there's a lot of ethical and interesting philosophical questions to ask. But again, if you look at sugar dating, it is skyrocketing in the last 5 years.
Especially when you look at something like OnlyFans, like, oh my God, even it cannot, I cannot escape it, because when I go on other podcasts, the host tends to invite OnlyFans models. Because I'm in the dating space, all these podcasts are finding that fascinating, and it's getting a lot of views. I was on Just Pearly Things a few weeks back. She has nearly 2 million subscribers, but she just got demonetized a few days ago by YouTube for hate speech. I was actually going to appear there on Thursday a few days ago, but that's the day she got demonetized. But anyway, when I was on there, there was an OnlyFans model and all these other podcasts that are popular in my kind of the niches I operate in. It's such a huge thing. Or maybe the particular podcast I'm looking at, I'm having a bit of a bias because that's what I'm looking at least. But this OnlyFans thing just came out of nowhere and has, I don't know, maybe it has done well over $1 billion by now. But there are women making so much money off of this. Now, of course, there are going to be some who only get $100 or something. But friends of mine know women who are making something like 5 or 6 figures monthly, every single month, just through OnlyFans, because men are willing to pay en masse in big numbers money to see videos and pictures. That's as far as I understand it. But once you get to, now let's imagine an AI version of OnlyFans, where instead of subscribing to this particular woman on, because you found her on Instagram, let's say, okay, she looks nice, but the image in your head has other ideas. This human is alive, but you can imagine your own perfect woman in your mind and make that happen on a, let's say, a futuristic AI OnlyFans, and you could put your money into that because you value the companionship. That could probably be, that's another crazy prediction. That could be like, huh?
That's already a thing. That's huge. There are AI generated models that are being operated by men that are becoming hugely popular. And I've seen documentary on that. And then you have these men posting, "Oh, babe, I love you. You look so hot." It's like, wait, this is an AI generated model that they're writing to this model. But it's already happening on OnlyFans. There are a lot of, I mean, I'm not sure how many, but they're very successful because with AI, they can make sure that this model looks exactly like certain kinds of men want it to look like. And they can do all kinds of poses, all kinds of pictures, all kinds of backgrounds. And they don't, just do it by AI.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. Yeah, go ahead.
There's an AI influencer currently on Instagram with 3 million followers. And all it is AI generated art that is influencing other brands. So she'll be wearing something or, at a place, but it's all AI generated imagery. And again, over 3 million followers.
Damn. Yeah, that's funny because I was looking on Instagram and I remember seeing one of these AI images. I was like, obviously that's AI. That's so obvious. And the people in the comments thought it was real. I I just couldn't believe it. Sometimes I forget that I'm very high on the IQ spectrum and that there are lots of people below who just cannot comprehend that this is obviously AI. I just don't understand it. Yeah, that's just so crazy to me. But there will always be men who are willing to put money into that. And I think that would just produce such a huge problem.
Yeah. And just for the record, OnlyFans, $2.5 billion in revenue last year. They're currently valued at 18 billion.
Yep, exactly. That is insane. Yeah.
I think OnlyFans is probably the most successful British tech firm. And whenever the British government is trying to talk up their England as an entrepreneurial base, they're suspiciously quiet about OnlyFans. They prefer to talk up their fintech companies. But yeah, OnlyFans, I think, is probably the most successful British firm.
Yeah, and the AI aspect isn't even all that can be faked. There's so many, even real OnlyFans models, of course. Um, Lots of them have men in the background managing their account, doing the messaging, because the woman doesn't even have time for that. Well, she does, but she doesn't want to bother with that. So it's just lots of guys are messaging these women, the real women, keep in mind. We just talked about AI when people think it's a real human, but it's not. But even with a real woman on OnlyFans, they think they're messaging her, but they're actually talking to a man managing her account.
Exactly. So there's actually not such a big difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it goes back to, we're looking for compatibility, and oftentimes we're looking for somebody to listen to us, to interact with us. And if I message 100 women on Tinder and I get one response, or I message 100 women on Instagram and get no response, or if I message 100 women on OnlyFans and get a bunch of responses that aren't real, then what's the difference with going on to an AI that's actually consistently responding to me?
On demand. Yeah, exactly. Because we can use Uber Eats and get McDonald's to our door within 20 minutes, let's say. We can, as convenient as McDonald's was either way, everything's just so on demand. We don't even have to wait for our TV shows anymore. Remember when we used to watch TV and we would change channel and okay, I get to wait for this thing to come on at 9 p.m. Now we can just cast and go on to Netflix and pick what we want. We live in an on-demand society, and I'm glad you highlighted that point because that's another dopamine related issue. Now we can just pick and choose whatever we want when we want, and we know it's going to happen. There's no if. It is going to happen. It's certainty. We can place our bets on that and it's going to happen. But when you're talking to a human, you don't know what the outcome can be. There's no predictability to it. But when you're using technology, there's always an outcome that is very predictable. So that's a crazy thing. So let's wrap it up here.
I think I just got a quick business idea, because I was talking to some people who are working on a psychotherapist, an AI-based psychotherapist, and we wanted to integrate it into our app to have a psychotherapist / life coach. And so now my idea is, how about if we have, let's say, we give each person, each premium subscriber, a harem of 5 women that all look stunningly hot, and they're all your psychotherapists. And then you can just every day of the week you can choose your psychotherapist, and they will give you advice. They know how you feel. You type that in. They know some of the behavior. They get to know you over time by the conversation, and they can give you the best life advice. They can be a good friend. They can listen to you. You just have to communicate to them either by voice, typing, or even by voice. And we can just design the voice and even like the image, the body, in such a way that they would resemble the hottest girls on OnlyFans. I think that might actually work.
You just gave it away, but yeah, let's give it a shot. Alrighty, let's wrap it up there. We covered a few interesting things. Crazy stuff. So here's how we're gonna do it. Each of you, I would ask, once I call you up, what are your top 3 needs? So for example, if you're part of a startup, maybe you're looking for investors, maybe you're looking to connect with people, or maybe you're hiring for a particular role. whatever your needs may be, if you do have any free needs, if you have free needs that you're in need of. I'm a bit slow today, that's why. And
I would say, oh, sorry.
oh, wait. Yeah, and where people can find you, and of course, if you're working on a startup, where people can find your startup too. So yeah, go ahead, Ike.
You can find us at psychometrica.org or sharedsmiles.org. And always, of course, as any startup, we're always looking for investors. And I would say a content editor or content creator, AI content creator, and video editor.
Alrighty. Matt.
Yeah, so Metropolis is kind of going back into stealth at the moment while we figure out best way to get to market. What I'm working on at the moment is trying to improve the face attractiveness model. So we've got a model which can, given a photo, can tell you how attractive the face is. It's 75% accurate. It works really well at the extremes, very attractive, very unattractive, but it's not so great in the middle. And unfortunately, most people are in the middle somewhere. So that's the priority at the moment, is just improving that. Once we're out of stealth and back into the market, our first priority is getting customers, just getting enough people in Sydney signed up at the same time.
Pretty. And Chris.
I was going to just say, based on that layering of phases, you just kind of touched on it. You should go do some research if you haven't already. A long time ago, 40 years ago or something, a researcher actually said, what would it look like if we took all of the faces and layered it on top of each other to try to get an idea of what the ideal human would be? And what they found was that there was actually an average, because at the end of the day, we're all basically similar in appearance. But there's some really interesting research that was done in terms of layering photos of faces on top of each other and seeing what those results are. Something to go look at.
So I saw that paper, and the average face was less attractive than the most attractive face in the set.
Yeah.
And I think what was happening, like I've seen the pictures, I think what was happening was the averaging does effectively smoothing. So a lot of the, it's like wearing makeup, basically. It's like layering lots of makeup because it's just smoothing things out. And I think that was the main effect there. Given a bunch of faces, the average would be like a 5 out of 10, I guess.
Yeah.
And weighing them, it was like a 6. I think it was just the makeup effect because you're smoothing out the irregularities, is my guess.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting theory, but I don't know if it has any predictive power.
Yeah. So I'm always open to talking with investors. Love investors. Any investors out there, come find me. I've got a couple of different projects going on beyond the dating. I'm also working on some gaming options, and as well as the AI company. So if it's in the AI space or video game space or dating space, your investor, please reach out. And you can find me at chrishood.com, CHRISHOOD.com. And on there is my blog, my podcast, all of my contact information, social media, my book. If you want to buy my book, right there, chrishood.com.
Nice, beautiful stuff. Thanks, guys, for being part of this. And let's see, because it has been so long since I did the last episode, which was the first. I might as well give an explanation. It has taken so long. So, of course, my wife has brain cancer. Just last night, I had to take her to the hospital. So this is just how my life is, very busy all the time. But I would love to do more of these. If you're watching, if you're a journalist, you're welcome to join. Almost had 1 or 2 on today. Actually, they just couldn't make it. But if you're in AI in any way, whether you're just a computer nerd just working on a random AI project on your own or at a big technology company or a small technology company, doesn't matter if you're passionate about AI, if you're writing a lot about AI, or if you're involved in some way, come join us. Just find a way to contact me. This is my channel, so you know where to go. I'm easy to find. Or if you're a dating coach, or you have your own dating app, or you have some kind of involvement in online dating, whatever that may be, same story. Come find me. You're welcome to join the panel and we can have these discussions. Or even better, if you are the CEO of an AI dating app or something like that, something that is a mixture of the two, even better. I love to have this combination. It's like a triangle, but it's crazy discussion that we can have. These conversations are great because it's like we're pioneering the discussion on AI and online dating, the intersection, the crossover, the crash of everything. Now, AI has opened fields everywhere. There's AI agriculture, AI, whatever you can name, that has already existed for thousands of years or decades. So it covers everywhere, but this particular thing, we cover AI and online dating, and of course dating that's related. So if any of this is relevant to you, can let me know and you can join the panel in the future. Let's just discuss that, and thanks for joining.